Join Jeanette Palmer, Jim Wojciechowski, and Kathy Wetters every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. on WRMN 1410 AM in Elgin for an enlightening and engaging program discussing various topics to help you and your family prepare for the golden years. We're taking your questions and visiting with long-term care experts about a wide range of issues important to today's seniors. Silver Solutions is now going on the road with on-site interviews. Stay tuned. Silver Solutions Show is sponsored by Right at Home in-home care and assistance. We are so honored today to have our guest, Tonya, and is it Deniz?
Deniz, like the girl's name.
Like the girl's name, and Ken Jernberg. I can do
That's
better
right.
with yours. Yep.
Yes.
From Transitional Living Company. First, please tell our listeners a little bit about your backgrounds and your roles at the company. I know some of it's going to come and be developed in the questions we're going to ask a little bit later. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you. We're so glad to be here. And a little bit about me. I come to Transitional Living Company after spending about 25 years working in market research for a couple of major international companies, and really come to it with a passion behind inclusiveness. Inclusiveness in terms of research as well as universal design. And prior to that, worked as an instructor in New York City for a couple of years, and I did a lot of volunteer work along the way, primarily in the disability space.
Hi, thank you also for having us. I'm also a co-founder of Transitional Living Company, and I'm the managing broker for Realty TLC. My background is in home building and engineering primarily. So I spent close to 20 years working for several different home builders, and I've been a licensed realtor for about 14 years. I've also done a lot of volunteering, including 5 years down in Biloxi, Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina, helping to rebuild that area down there. And I was fortunate enough to have 3 wonderful sons that went with me each trip, and they enjoyed it. We all had a great time, and it was very fulfilling.
So we learned over breakfast, you had made like 5 trips down there?
Five trips, yes.
That is really so. And your skill set was so much in demand, was it not?
Yeah.
It was, and particularly my middle son really took off because he really enjoys that type of work. So I was able to show him some things, and he ended up actually probably eclipsing me in talent for that type of thing. So I was very proud of him.
Oh, well, that was nice. And then you passed that talent along.
Yeah,
That's very good.
Well, we were excited to have you as our guest before we met you, but the topic is one that we've never I really focused on in this depth. But we were just, all 3 of us were just enthralled when we learned more about your backgrounds and what you do and your vision for your company and for helping folks that need more access at home. It was a delight. So I know our listeners will learn a lot today.
And so if you could start out by telling us, what do you do as Transitional Living Company and Realty TLC?
We are thriving in place professionals as well as project managers and licensed real estate brokers, which is part of Realty TLC. And essentially what we do is we provide construction to allow for thriving in place using elements like universal design in the home. We also provide real estate for when it does come time to move. Move management for the downsizing, decluttering, and moving and packing when that time, as I mentioned before, does come. And lastly, we do a lot of work in the area of education, really empowering people to make them aware of all the various options that are available today that didn't even exist before the start of the millennium, that really can help promote thriving in place.
And we were all excited about this morning because we learned a lot about the history, of what really brought this vision forward. Can you just cover that real quickly in regards to it was ADA, right?
Right. Back one of the things that inspired me, going a little bit back to my career, I worked in market research for a number of years, and very early in that career, I discovered that people with disabilities, as well as older segments of the population, really 65 plus, were not proactively recruited and invited to participate in a lot of the kind of market research that gets done daily in the United States to the tune of $2 billion a year. That they were not recruited to participate in some of those research studies. And companies use a vast amount of research as the basis for developing new products and services for the masses. So without their voice, things get developed without really understanding what their unmet needs are. And they do have very unique set of needs that are different than some other population groups. So it became a quest of mine to really go out and actively kind of pursue that and see what could be done to kind of correct that imbalance. And with that, that's when I founded a nonprofit called Disability Insights, where we did some huge market research studies with the thanks of Kantar Media. And from one of the findings that we found is that there's a vast amount of unmet needs, particularly as it relates to seniors and people with disabilities, as it relates to the home. So we use the term thriving in place to really refer to a person who is proactively, and I'm going to say that again, proactively choosing to live in the residence of their own choice, and to do so safely, comfortably, and independently for as long as they are possibly able. Thriving in place is not a passive activity. It's not just simply waiting for the years to add up. It's really getting out there and purposely and intentionally, as well as purposefully, making the necessary steps and planning ahead for life-changing events. As we all know, one thing we don't have to work at, it happens automatically, is that we're all going to age.
Yes.
And so to proactively plan for that, you can make much better decisions and find yourself happier and therefore thriving in the place of your own choice.
What a great term.
And I love that. Okay, thriving in place. Now, could you get into, and you covered it a little bit, designing for all. This is what the amazing thing was we talked about this morning.
Design for all is or universal design, both terms can sometimes be used interchangeably, is basically really designing for or accommodating people of all sizes, ages, and abilities. So it is really, it benefits everyone because you are designing for the widest possible range of people in the widest range of situations without making any sort of special adaptations to the design or making any sort of special changes to it. So you're being inclusive. You're considering everyone who might need or utilize this product. Some basic examples of universal design would be a Lazy Susan, which many of us have in our
Yes,
cabinets in our homes. Touchless faucets and touchless toilets. We see those a lot in some public restrooms. There is a whole vast array of universal design elements that many of us already enjoy outside the home. Curbless sidewalks would be another example. And to bring these elements into the home, whereby, let's face it, 8,000 to 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 every day. That trend started in 2011 and it's going to continue to the year 2030. And 90% of these folks want to stay in their homes for as long as they can.
Yes.
We bring more universal design and design for all elements within the home if we can make that dream a reality.
Ken, you made an important point I have to admit I never thought of before. We've made it easier for a car to enter the home than we did for a human being to enter the home.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, yeah. And yeah, getting back to the ADA, and that's kind of where a lot of my interest started, which was passed 26 years ago in 1990, and that mandated a zero-step entry, many other things, but through the legislation it was only for public buildings and residential buildings, with multi-unit residential buildings that would have an elevator. So single-family homes, townhomes were excluded from that
Wow.
bill. But in doing our research and looking into it, we kind of realized that, garages have always been a zero-step entry. There's never been a step for a car to get in. There's always been a lot of accommodations for cars. And to digress or to move forward, as a realtor in the multiple listing service, there's actually 16 distinct categories for where you put your car, whether it's an owned spot, leased, is it, it has its own PIN number, is it a garage? Is it a carport? Just, you know, endless numbers of possibilities for searching for things and where you put your car. But for accessibility issues, there's only one drop-down menu with 36 items that are not really they're all there. Some of them are not even properly termed. It just makes it a lot more difficult to find accessibility for a person to enter their home, but it makes it very easy, and it's always been easy to get your car into the garage.
Right. What is another great term you have, a home accessibility report? I have never heard of this before.
Okay, well, people that do want to stay in their home as they age, their homes don't change. So a home that you buy in your 20s or 30s and raise your family is a great home, but as we age, realize there's some barriers to access. The stairs, maybe the doorway widths, the doorknobs or the handles on the cabinets, even the toilet paper holder. There's many things that present barriers to access and make life a little bit difficult. So we go into the home, people that want to remain there for another 5, 10, 15 years. And so we go into the home and do an accessibility assessment. We look at the home with the occupant in mind, depending on where they are in their stage of life. And they may have, you know, early stage Parkinson's, they may have low vision or having hearing difficulties, whatever their issues are. We look at the home, taking them into account, and we look at the home room by room, and what we call scenario by scenario, or a day in the life. What do the person, like when they get out of bed, how do they get to the bathroom? How do they get down to the kitchen? Where do they spend their time? So we look at that every aspect of their life and their home. We look at over 600 variables, and the report, the inspection takes about 90 minutes.
600
Right.
variables, yeah.
And then after the assessment, we do a report that shows what we found with recommendations and guidelines for things they can do using universal design or design for all to improve their home, either remove barriers to access or add safety features to make their life more enjoyable so they can stay in their home comfortably, independently, and safely for as long as they would like to.
You don't find many washer and dryers tucked away in basements, do you?
Unfortunately, that's that's where most of them are, and that can make it difficult.
Sure can.
Yeah, and the recommendation, you know, for a lot of people would be to try to move it upstairs and make the laundry room upstairs on the first floor or second floor where the clothes are, where it makes more sense.
Right.
Makes more sense, yeah. And so what's the difference between the home accessibility report and a home inspection?
Okay, well, a home inspection, probably more people are familiar with that. Typically, when you buy a new home, before you even close, you have a home inspection, and that is done to see kind of the health of the house, to make sure all the mechanical systems are working, that everything is, at least you get a snapshot in time of what the health of the house is. The inspector might say, well, your furnace is 10 years old and it has a life expectancy of 20, so you can expect to be replacing that in 10 years, or various things like that throughout the home. He'll give you, either it's working or it's not, and then the homeowner makes the decision whether to go ahead with the purchase. The home assessment, we're looking at the house, but it's with the user in mind, and very much looking currently, but also toward the future. So we might say, yes, your furnace, we don't say it's 10 years old, we say, is the filter easy to change? Do you have access to the filter? We might look at the stairway and say, yes, it does have a nice sturdy handrail on the right side, but you probably should add one to the left side to make it easier for everybody to get up and down. We might look at a light switch and say, yeah, the light switch, the inspector would say, yeah, the light switch works. We would say you might want to change that conventional light switch to a toggle switch that's illuminated, so it's easier to see in the dark and it's easier to operate for everybody with pushing rather than flipping up and down. Similarly, doorknobs or anything like that, we would look at it and see ways that it could be modified to make it a more universal design and easier for everyone to use.
So if someone was going to buy a home, would they be able to contact you and have you come in and give them advice like you would on a home inspection?
We certainly could do it when they buy the home. Typically, people do it that have lived in a home for many years and want to stay there. We could, people are buying a home and want to know if it's going to be accessible to them for many years. We could look at it, at that point also and make recommendations on what they could do before they move in to allow them to live there longer.
And so is that something that I'm just envisioning it as something that a potential home buyer could, if they find a house that they really like, and then they invite you to come in and give them an assessment, and then that would be a negotiating tool for them to negotiate with the seller for them to buy the home. You know, that's where my mind was going.
I mean, that's typically the way a home inspection works, because the inspector would find that, oh, this, the disposal isn't working, or the roof is near at the end of its life, and those things are negotiated. Certainly everything's negotiable, and an assessment could show the characteristics of the home that could be changed to make it more accessible, removing barriers to access. But again, light switch may work, so the seller might say, well, it works, so
Right.
why should I replace it? But to make it easier to use for years down the road, we would make a recommendation to change it to a rocker style. But it certainly could be negotiated with a seller also if it's someone's moving into the home.
And depending on the cost of the home, if you wanted to negotiate an elevator.
That would be a great negotiation.
And by the way, that's exactly what Ken and Tonya are doing here, because there's starting to become a bigger market for personal elevators in the home.
Right.
Absolutely.
If a person 20 years ago has bought a 2-story house, okay, and they want to stay in the house, this is a tremendous consideration.
One of the things that a lot of people are becoming more and more aware of is a term called visitability, whereby the home is completely accessible for someone who may be in a wheelchair, or someone who may have other mobility challenges. And an elevator, as well as other means of helping to transport people into the home, number one is zero-step entry, really can add value to a home. And this is something that we're finding that we're educating more and more people who might be of the mindset that if I do put a ramp in, or if I do put grab bars in, I'm going to devalue my home. And that's actually not the case. Going back to the number I mentioned earlier about the number of people who are turning 65 every day, and the fact that 1 out of 3 adults in the United States is over the age of 50, these types of features in a home actually add value. Mm-hmm. So you're not taking away the value of your home, and you are increasing that value.
So, are you guys general contractors, or?
No, we are not. We call ourselves project managers, and the difference is we take, after we do the report, and we make recommendations and give guidelines for things that can be done to make physical modifications to the home. Then the homeowner, we work with them and their budget, and they decide what projects they want to do, and what they want, how they want to modify their house. Part of the report that we do that I failed to mention, we give recommendations based on 3 kind of points in time. We recommend things that need to be done like now, that really should be done immediately, and things that should be done maybe in 6 months to a year, and then things that might be a year plus. So we kind of break it down into those 3 categories. So after they've decided which projects they want to handle, then we develop a scope of work for those items, and we actually put it out to bid to general contractors.
Oh, okay.
If it's a big job, then maybe an architect or designer would also need to be brought into the mix, as well as possibly suppliers. So we act as a project manager to bring all those parties together to then present that to the homeowner, and they contract directly with the general contractor, architect, designer, so be it. And then we act as the liaison and advocate for the client as the project goes forward, and we kind of help them when invoices are presented, change orders, things like that, to make sure everything is fair and that they're being protected and not being taken advantage of.
Can you share with our listeners some examples of types of designs that may be put in place to address some thriving in place issues?
Yes, we our recommendations are again based on the person's abilities. So if they have mobility challenges or dexterity challenges, we make recommendations based on those. Some big areas in the house that we find that need modification are the kitchen and the bathrooms. So in the kitchen, there's typically houses or people put their dishes in the upper cabinets.
Yes.
So that can, if you're in a wheelchair, they're inaccessible, or even, dishes are heavy and you have to reach for them. So there's now, cabinets tend to have lower drawers where the drawer comes right out, below the cabinet. There's not even a door you open, it's just a nice decorative drawer.
Oh, okay.
And there's drawers for dishes that have dividers. You can put your dishes, your silverware, all your napkins
Oh, vertically.
in a, or vertically or flat. And then
Stacked.
and you
Gotcha.
can see it because it's a drawer you pull out and you can see everything. It's easy to get from the drawer to the table, from the dishwasher back to the drawer. You never have to lift anything up. So that things, cabinets, like that are something we make a lot of recommendations. If a person's in a wheelchair, there's you have to provide knee space under a stove, sink, a workstation.
Wow.
And there's ways you can do that. So you have a panel that covers the plumbing that's the same color as the cabinet, so it looks very nice. You don't have exposed plumbing. You can, if you raise a dishwasher even just 9 inches, it's accessible. And no one has to stoop down so low to get things out of the lower rack. Someone in a wheelchair can reach both racks. In the bathroom, a big thing we recommend would be a 0-step shower. So you can actually just take the bathtub out. Very few people take baths anymore. If that's what the homeowner wants, put in a shower where there's no step, so you don't have to step up or down, and it just makes it easier to get in and out of, and just safer, because a lot of people, I know we had a client whose biggest fear was taking a bath, because he had a bathtub to get in and out, and he was just, that was his biggest fear, was bath day.
Makes a lot of sense. Awful lot of sense.
One thing that comes to mind, there's an architect that we love her work. Her name is Deborah Pierce, and she actually is the author of the book Accessible Home. She's out in Boston. And she made this comment, which is we found to be so true. When you design for, let's say, a child ability to access things within the home, you pretty much kind of cover everyone else, meaning the child's height's obviously lower. But even when the electrical light switches are lowered, or as well as the outlets, the receptacles are raised, you really make it much easier for less bending, less stooping down. It just makes a lot of sense to really, again, going back to that whole notion of designing for all abilities, basically.
Sure.
Now, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the cabinets and the dishwashers. A lot of injuries that happen to seniors, especially when it comes to sciatica, is done by either reaching or bending.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is all common sense stuff that you guys are really bringing to the forefront and helping educate people about.
Well, I was thinking about the dishwasher and how that door comes down.
Yeah.
And it would be a lot easier if it went to the side to access in there, quite frankly.
Right, and there's even dishwashers that are drawers, so you'd have 2 drawers.
Right.
It still pulls out,
Right.
but then you don't have the door flapping down.
Right.
You just pull out drawers, and there's even microwaves like that are built in. It's more of a drawer than a door that opens up. And that you have to avoid while it opens.
Another thing that we also note a lot in our accessibility assessment is the need for lighting. A lot of people don't realize that as we age, by age 60, we require 60% more light than we did when we were in our 20s.
I'm with you there.
And-
We're all there. We're all there.
Yep.
And let's face it, whether you're in the kitchen or the bedroom, light is just so necessary. So we are always, proponents of more task lighting in areas, as well as being cognizant about ambient light. Ambient lighting is important too, making sure there's not too much glare. But we can't just stress the importance of light, even particularly around stairs, because let's face it, the number one injury to seniors is falls, and a lot of times it's attributed to lack of light, or stairs as well.
Definitely.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah. And so, can you tell us more about your real estate and move management and education offering?
Okay, I'll talk about real estate. So Realty TLC is a boutique realty. We're based in northwest side of Chicago. We cover the Chicago area. So our motto is putting people first always. We try to really listen to what people have to say and respond, and we really value the interaction with the client over the transaction. We are seniors real estate specialists, which is a designation from the National Association of Realtors, which I believe came into existence about 2007 in response to the aging population. So we just have extra special sensitivity to the needs of seniors. They communicate a lot different. You know, millennial clients say, "Oh, just you email me that, and I'll sign that electronically."
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Seniors say, "No, come down, sit down at my kitchen table, and let's look at this, face to face, and go over these points." So we're very sensitive to the needs of older people. We are also have the designation military relocation professional, which enables us to be more sensitive to the needs of the veterans, and which they also have many of them have accessibility needs, and there's obviously they have the special financing and everything. So we're very in tune with those needs also. And as I mentioned earlier, we're passionate about the multiple listing service and really trying to educate realtors about the accessibility features that are already in the MLS that they need to put in their listing, so that people that are looking for those features will be able to find them.
Right, in a price range that they're looking
In a price
for.
range that they're looking for,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, and we use the term right size, meaning now that they're moving into a home that is really more suitable to where they are in their current life stage, which typically tends to be smaller. We assist with the downsizing and the decluttering. Let's face it, living in a home for 30 some odd years, you've accumulated quite a number of things. So the dismantling, the letting go of those things is sometimes a daunting and sometimes a very emotional task.
Yes.
So being sensitive to those needs, we offer move management services that also include the disposal of those items, or whether they want to mail them to a friend or a family member, or donate them to charity, or to sell them. And we also provide the oversight for the moving, helping them to actually find them a mover. There's a lot of movers that we actually have a very close partnership with. And then we get them unpacked. So literally all they need to do is just show up at their new place of residence, and we even make sure that linens are on the beds.
Oh, nice.
And that they can just settle right into their home, because let's face it, even when you're in your 20s or 30s, moving is a stressful
It sure
activity.
It is.
But particularly for someone who's older, who in most cases is downsizing because either the loss of a loved one, or, like I said before, the loss of a lot of belongings. As far as the education, there's a lot of education that needs to be given, not only to seniors themselves, but also to the adult children, as well as other senior service providers. Just as we mentioned about the issue with the MLS, there's a whole number of professions and certifications and designations which have emerged since the start of the millennium. And the good news is that that's really good for people in terms of being able to look for resources to kind of help them navigate the turbulent waters of helping a parent to thrive in place, or help themselves to thrive in place. So we do a lot of talks, and we do lunch and learn programs for a number of employers in the Chicago area, speak at a number of civic organizations, and being able to be fortunate enough to be able to talk on a show like yours today really helps us to get the word out of all the things that exist out there. And having all this under one single roof really just makes it that much easier for our clients to be able to help them wherever they are throughout their journey to continue to thrive in place.
Right. Our time has gotten away from us again, but we want you to please share your contact information, telephone, internet, address, etc.
Our website is the name Transitional Living Company, company spelled out, .com. Our address, we're located in Chicago downtown, and the address is 4918 North St. Louis Avenue, Suite 2, and that's in Chicago. And our phone number is area code 312-265-6566.
And even though you're located in Chicago, you'll travel anywhere.
Right, we serve the whole Chicago area, and our zip code is 60625. I'm not sure if Tonya mentioned that.
Oh.
Yeah, we serve up into Lake County, DuPage County,
Sure.
Cook,
Okay.
obviously. Yeah.
Excellent.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.